This morning is an important church holiday that does not get observed in the United Church of Christ super often, but that I bring to you from my Lutheran background, that I think is pretty spiritually important, and comes to us most strongly from our Catholic siblings as well. And that is the practice of observing All Saints' Day and All Souls Day. So Halloween is a shortening of the word All Hallows Eve, in the ways that English does the English thing and creates new words. So breaking that down, what that means is that it is the night before All Hallows, or those things that we hold as holy, or All Saints Day. And then the following day is All Souls Day. So in the Catholic Church, that is what's called a day of obligation. So if you are Catholic, you're supposed to show up for these services in addition to Sunday masses, because it is an important piece of the religious life. And I think that in the move away from Catholicism in the Reformation and beyond, we've lost something pretty important in the life of the church. Traditionally speaking, even pre-Christian, this time of year is when people have felt the most close to those who have gone on before them. The language in some circles is that this is the time when the veil between worlds is the thinnest. And in this time, it is also the Celtic New Year. So the Celtic holiday of Samhain falls on the 31st, which is the new year, but it is also the dying of the old year. So throughout multiple European traditions, this is a time of incredible and deep holiness. And it is a time when the earth is less resourced. We have passed the harvest. There is nothing left growing in our yards. If you are like me, I had leaves on my tree yesterday. I don't anymore. That there is a big shift that is happening. And so we enter into relationship with Psalm 46, one that you may be familiar with. You probably know that one little verse, "Be still and know that I am God." It's on lots of curios and bumper stickers and things like that. It's one of our favorite verses, but I think it gets ripped out of context. We often use it to talk about our own personal stillness. But in reality, the context of Psalm 46 is talking about what happens when everything is falling apart. As we talked about last week, there is lots that is falling apart. I know in this community specifically, we carry deep grief and concern over world events in the ongoing conflict in between Israel and Palestine. We grieve for the lives lost. And if you have been paying attention to the news, we have two major mass shootings just in the last couple of days, one in Maine and one in Florida. And those are just the ones that have made the news, the ones that have come across our news feeds or across our timelines on social media. And so I don't know about you, but as we cycle toward, again, the first anniversary of the murders at Club Q, I find myself in need of resource. As the psalm says, I really want that stream that makes glad the city of God. I don't know that I feel like I have it right now. There is so much grief to go around, griefs that we haven't recovered from yet. griefs that keep coming, a 1, 2, 3, and 4 punch. I can't catch my breath sometimes. And so I ponder, what is it about this time of year that beckons me toward that thin veil, that sense of connection and making sense of my grief? And there is a wisdom, I think, of the order that these holy days are observed in. So we observe All Saints' Day first. And All Saints' Day is a little bit different than All Souls' Day. All Saints' Day is where we remember those people who have gone on before us, who we are now inheriting their life and their work. It is about those people of faith who cut the path for us to be where we are today, and we celebrate their legacy and their lineage. And so, were we gathering together, I was going to show you something important to me. I had it all laid out so that I wouldn't forget it this morning, and then I woke up to 11 inches of snow on Hancock and decided I think that we need to not do this morning. But this is my grandmother's Book of Common Prayer. My grandmother died when I had just turned 12. And so, but I know that she was a deacon in her Episcopal church. And so throughout the years, even though I didn't ever have the chance to talk to her before even I thought that maybe pastoral ministry could even possibly be something I could consider, I have held on to this book of her prayers. Published in 1926. I wish you could smell it. It smells like old leather and holiness. I love it. It's one of my favorite tangible objects. And I don't know my grandmother super well. When you're 12, you don't know what questions to ask or how to sit at an elder's feet. So there's a lot I have had to go back and get. The anniversary of her death was just a few days ago. She has been gone for 20 years now. And yet, I know that through her and through her relationship with my father and the relationship that I had with her before she passed, I am who I am in ways I don't even know, because she was who she was. And I can hold the book that she prayed with and feel a close connection with this woman I wish I knew better. We are inheritors of our faith. There are people who have taught us over and over and over again throughout the course of our life what it means to be faithful. In a tangential way, my grandmother is one of them. And so I want to take a moment for us to name where our resource comes from, who those people were that taught us what it means to walk this path, to travel in the way of Jesus. And so I invite you to unmute. And after I invoke my grandmother, it's for you to also invoke those people who have shaped you into the person you are today. Susan Van Winkle Hicks. Harima.
Pedro Pablo Sanchez and Albertina Sanchez. My grandma and grandpa.
Deborah, who do you have?
Sue Hall, John's sister Sue, and Denny Lynch. his brother-in-law.
Dave, I would say, Pastor Ralph Rusley from the University Lutheran Center in North Dakota State University back in the 80s was one of the first ones that helped me with, he's gone now, but he was one of the first ones that religion doesn't have to be like those other guys say. And so I thought that was probably a big turning point of not giving up on this whole enterprise.
Thank you.
I got two. I got my Aunt Ruth. In my family, a lot of people didn't do a lot of really good modeling, and she was phenomenal. And she taught me a lot, and she was just a kind woman. And I had a college professor, Cindy just said, how about Paul Grandvik? So he was my college choir director, and exposed me to a lot of different music and how we could live within the music, and have that in our hearts. And we took a choir trip, and I got exposed to choirs from Israel, and it was just really an important time for me. And that was just shortly after the Olympics had occurred, and there were the shootings, and some of the Israeli team, I think, were killed in that. So it was just he was a really important person, and I still keep in touch with him a little bit.
So thank you. Barbara, did I see your hand?
Yeah, my mother, Emma Frances Barnett, she's the one who gave me my first Bible. And then beyond that, she didn't say a word. She said, read it for yourself. And but she modeled caring for other people.
Thank you.
My mother, Mary Sarah Halverson, was her maiden name. Was really important for my faith. For my husband, both of his parents, Marge and Howard Trumbull.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I've shared this with some of you before, that I was a very, very good little Catholic girl, and I was going to be a school sister of Notre Dame, and had a conversation with my grandmother, Loretta Hickey Milner, good Irish lady, about the Pope's stance on abortion and birth control. And this little Irish lady looked at me and said, he no play the game, he no make of the rules. And allowed me to question. And that was the start. Oh, whoa. So.
Also, she sounds amazing.
Okay, so I'm kind of cheating here because I've got a few. Some I know in real life, some I don't. Obviously, my parents and grandparents are all four of them very religious, but they're religious in kind of a more conservative evangelical way. And when I was going through a period of like being an agnostic, the reason why I didn't hate like Christianity 100% was because I still had like an emotional connection to Christian music. And specifically, I want to call out two artists, Semler, who's like a queer like pop rock artist who is like a Christian, who's like outspokenly pro LGBT, and then also Lecrae, who is the best Christian rapper, and he got a lot of flack back in the day for being pro BLM. So they kind of like introduced me to progressive Christianity.
So thank you. In the context of the Psalm, I see All Saints' Day as the river whose streams make glad the city of God. If we are a refugee church, then we are taking refuge in the arms of God and in the company of one another. This Psalm promises us this refuge, that it is there for us, even amidst all of the tumult. And yet we need sustenance. If there is a siege, you need food coming in, you need water, right? In a battle sense, having water flow through your city is the most important thing for your survival. And so, as we observe All Saints, these names that we have named are part of the stream which nourishes us. The newness, the possibility, that's the theme I heard, that all of these people who have poured into us, who have become part of who we are, they introduced us to what could be when we didn't have the capacity to imagine it for ourselves, or who had never been exposed to other things. And so All Saints Day, we start with nourishment. We start with celebration. We start with having enough and being connected in the midst of seeking refuge. And also, the kingdoms are tottering. The earth feels like it's melting. The waters are roaring and foaming, and even the mountains feel like they are trembling in their tumults. I resonate with that part of this psalm a lot in these days. And the last part of the psalm asks us to behold desolation. It asks us to be present to grief. It asks us to pay attention to what hurts. And that prepares us for All Saints Day, which is traditionally where we spend time naming the names of the people who have died in the last year. However, grief doesn't know the boundaries of one annual solar cycle. It lives on in us beyond what maybe we were prepared for before we first experienced it, and also lives on beyond the memory of some of our friends and family. And so this is a time set aside for that memory, to name the names of those we have lost, and to come face to face with the fact that it still hurts. And so I want to share with you my favorite picture of my mother. Some of you may remember that the year that I was a student intern was the year my mom passed away in 2019. We're coming up on 5 years of traveling together in this community, but 5 years also of her death. And sometimes I think that the grief actually in some ways is worse than it was when I first lost her. So this is how I choose to remember her most of the time, with a childlike wonder and a love of cupcakes. This was her 60th birthday, and I love the look of delight on her face. And also, I recognize that with the events of the last year, there are just times when I wish I could call my mom, and I can't. And that hurts. And so I am bringing her into this space. Sandra Jane Wood Hicks. And I invite you to name those loved ones who their loss has been our own personal tumult of the mountains, the roaring and shaking of the sea, our own earth's melting.
This year we lost my Aunt Ida. She was the youngest of my grandmother's siblings. So her entire generation is gone.
Thank you. Cayenne.
My sister, Yolanda Baker, who left us last December.
Thank you, Cayenne. So I didn't know any of them personally. I want to uplift Derek and Daniel and Tiffany and Kelly and Raymond, those who were murdered in the Club Q shooting. Cayenne.
On behalf of Dana's mom, Petey Leggett, she asked me if we could lift up Dana's dad, Dave Leggett.
Absolutely. Thank you. There are names, I am sure, that are written on our hearts, which may or may not be spoken into this space. And so the message I leave you with is that there is refuge and there is nourishment, even in our grief, even when everything feels like it is falling apart. The promise of God in this psalm, the faithful song of people and their experience, is that God is a source of refuge and strength, but there is also a flowing stream of nourishment which supports and sustains us in days of grief like these ones. Amen, my siblings. Blessed be.